In this video, I'm going to show you what I call the gouache problem and a paper that I think solves it. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're not yet subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and also hit the little bell so you get notified next time I do a video. So I've been sharing on my channel lately a bunch of tips and tricks for gouache painters. And in this video, I want to explain to you what I call the gouache problem. And this is just kind of a term that I kind of made up. And it's basically one of the things that I think especially beginning gouache painters have trouble dealing with is how the values in the paint shift as they dry. And one of the reasons that happens is because gouache behaves a little bit differently than watercolor, where a lot of the water in the paint has to evaporate in order for you to get the true value of what you put down. So if you lay down a wet brush stroke, it tends to shift color and value as the water evaporates from that paint. So one of the reasons that happens is because, one, there's too much water in your paint when you put it down on the paper. One of the other reasons is that the sizing of the paper keeps the water from soaking into the paper itself. And for the most part, that's a good thing, especially if you're a watercolor artist. With gouache, you get a big change from where you first lay the paint down and where it dries. So recently, we started using this paper from Jerry's Artorama called Nujabi, and it's a handmade watercolor paper. And the special thing about this paper is that it's pretty thick but not sized. So what happens with the water is that it soaks into the paper itself pretty quickly, therefore making the shift from wet to dry really quickly. And when you're out plein air painting, that shift in value and color that happens as the paint evaporates can make a big difference both in how fast you can complete your painting and the judgment that you have of the colors in your paint versus what you're looking at. Because when you're painting in gouache, what you think you observed when you mix your color and put it down on the paper versus what you end up with because of the change in your paint due to the water evaporating can actually be a huge difference. But with Nujabi paper, the way the paper itself soaks the water in, that difference between wet and dry is a lot smaller, and that shift is not only less noticeable, but it happens a lot quicker. So let me demonstrate to you this phenomenon happening in real time, and I'll show you some examples of paintings done with the Nujabi paper. Okay guys, so I'll tell you about the materials I'm using for this demonstration here. This is a watercolor sketchbook paper made with Fabriano, cold press, and it's a pretty high quality paper, but it is a watercolor paper, so it's meant to deal with lots of water on it. And this is a fresh sheet of the Nujabi paper, which is not sized, and so it is meant to absorb the water instead of kind of keep it more surface like the Fabriano paper is. So we'll go ahead and do really quickly. Just open up my palette here. Get a little bit of water. Let's just treat it like we're doing, just like a watercolor or a gouache painting. Get that going there. And we'll use some white. So let me get out of that. We'll use some dark color here. Let's put some pure white. Blend that in. And so that's kind of running the gamut of what you will get out of gouache paint. Wait for that to dry. So this is kind of the typical amount of water that somebody would use in the course of painting in gouache. And so let's do the same thing with our Nujabi paper. So there's a lot more drag on the brush and paper when it comes to the Nujabi than the Fabriano, I'm noticing. And it's already almost drying up. You can see it has a different type of texture to it. My brush wasn't quite as clean as I really wanted it to be. That is a different story. But yeah, I could already notice that when I was putting down the white over this swatch here, this one was already almost dry. So it let me layer a lot more quickly than I would have with this one. Like, see this swatch down here, I'm still waiting for it to dry as well as this one is. And yeah, you can see the rate of evaporation is a lot quicker in the Nujabi paper. And the reason this is important, like I was explaining before, was when you're out plein air painting and you're waiting to see what your results are from when you put down your brush work to planning your next move, you kind of have to wait a little more with this paper to see how it's going to end up when it's dry. And the results in the Nujabi paper are a lot more immediate. And layering is something that's pretty crucial in gouache, and you're going to be able to do that a lot quicker and move a lot faster out in the field. Like, I'm here in a room, you know, regular room temperature, but normally out here in California, it's pretty dry weather. You're going to have the water from the paint evaporate really quickly. Like, even for this paint, actually, it'll evaporate. But with the Nujabi paper out in the field, it's almost immediate, and that'll take some getting used to, and it might not be something you love, but if you're used to using just regular watercolor paper, or, you know, even sketchbook paper, not even this high quality of watercolor paper out in the field, and you're finding trouble judging your values in gouache to what you observe out in the field, give the Nujabi paper a try. So I'll show you some examples of paintings I did out in the field. So here are a couple of paintings I did out in the field. They were both done on the same day. And the nice thing about working with this paper is getting all these subtle light values in here. If I was waiting for the water to evaporate out of my paper like I would with regular watercolor paper, this would be a lot more tedious and difficult. And I found with this paper out in the field that it really helps to speed up my process and get to the values that I'm really after. So I hope that you guys found this little demonstration informative and inspirational. And if you guys do use this paper out in the field, please let me know. Okay, so now that you've seen what the Nujabi paper does, how it acts, and this gouache problem shown in real time, and how the gouache behaves on the Nujabi paper, we've been working with this paper for a while, and I have my girlfriend Vanessa Walsh to show you her paintings and give her opinion on this paper as well.
Nujabi handmade paper is not sized, which means it absorbs water very quickly. This makes it great for gouache plein air. It's great for scenes that require a lot of layering, like seascapes, where you have to layer many different colors for waves. Because of the fast dry time, also, you can see your true colors of your whites. One of the main problems in gouache is your white will shift once the water dries out of it. So oftentimes you'll get the wrong value for your whites because the value will change once it dries. With Nujabi paper, it dries so quickly that you have a lot less of this problem. You can see the bright whites I managed to get in the highlights of this wave, which can be difficult with gouache. It's also great for preparing with a casein underpainting. Here's an example of a painting. I underpainted this with casein in yellow ochre, which is a color prominently featured in the scene. This can save a lot of time when you're painting because you don't have to cover every single part of the paper. Another option is to paint with a complementary casein underpainting. Here's an example of a painting I used red casein for the underpainting of. This is a very green scene, and the little bits of red showing through adds some interest to the color. Another way to use a red underpainting would be to allow the color red to show through and let that add some interest to the color of your painting. You can do this with any color too. It doesn't have to be complementary, and it doesn't even have to be featured in your scene. You could just use it to add some interest. Also wanted to touch on what Nujabi paper is not the greatest for. So if you're an experienced gouache artist, you may have come to kind of rely on the quirks of gouache for certain properties of your painting. One example I would use is a subtle reflected light. So if you're doing a still life, one of the keys to realism in your still life is going to be this subtle reflected light. You can maybe see on the bottom of these pomegranate seeds. So the way I achieve an effect like this is to use very wet white gouache mixed with the local color. And the dry down will allow for just the perfect subtlety for reflected light. Now when I try to do this with Nujabi paper, the paint just layers on a little bit too thick and doesn't have that like special subtle quality. This is Arches paper, by the way, which is sized. So yeah, that is my review of Nujabi handmade paper. It's definitely my go-to for plein air these days. I also love the look of the deckled edges. I think that these cute little 5x7s especially are perfect if you just have an hour and a half to do a quick plein air. They have a nice look to them. They're also pretty sturdy. There's no buckling whatsoever, which is any water media artist's greatest enemy. So that's great. You can just paint straight on here. I usually tape down just the edges, but it's not even really necessary to tape down because it's such strong paper. So yeah, I would definitely give this a recommend. It's pretty affordable too. You can get a 10-pack of these 5x7s in the $10 to $12 range. Highly recommend Nujabi handmade paper.
All right. Thanks to Vanessa for sharing her thoughts on Nujabi paper. So in this video, I explained to you what I call the gouache problem and a few different ways on how to get around it and how Nujabi paper helps with that. So if you guys are interested in checking out Nujabi paper, the best place I know to get it is at jerrysartorama.com, and it's pretty cheap per paper. So it's a good paper to experiment with. It might be your thing, it might not be, but it won't cost you a whole lot to find out for yourself. So if you're curious about it, go ahead and find the link to it in the description of this video. And so go ahead and find a link to where to buy it on the description of this video. And if you do end up using it, let me know. Hit me up on Instagram at Sergio Lopez Fine Art or Sergio Lopez Landscapes and send me what you've done with it. So yeah, hope you guys subscribe, and I hope that you look forward to the next video. All right, see you guys next time.